Welcome to the January 24th meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. I'm Joanne Sprague, the Vice Chairman of the FinCom, sitting in for our Chairman, Stephen Daniel, who will be watching from home today. Anyone recording this meeting, please address the Chair. And the meeting is broadcast live and will be available in the archive. We'll begin our meeting today with a roll call. John Papalardo, not here. Andy Young.
Here.
Tommy Doan.
Here.
Stephen Daniel is not with us. Kristen Andres is not with us. Tracy Shields.
Here.
Barbara Madison.
Here.
Norma Avalar.
Here.
And the Chair, Joanne Sprague, is here. With us today are our Town Manager, Jill Goldsmith, and our Finance Director, Alex Halela. And on our agenda today is Finance Director Alex Halela's presentation of fiscal year 24 operating and capital budget. The committee wants to congratulate Alex on winning the National Excellence Award for Financial Reporting, and this report is indeed a winner. Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you very much.
You have the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Wages should be increased, don't you?
I'm sorry?
I think your wages should be increased with that honor.
If the Finance Committee recommends that, I'm fine with that.
We're going to take that under consideration.
I'll have to change the budget, no. Thank you very much. I'm here with Town Manager Jill Goldsmith to present the budget as she presented to the Select Board last week. It's a lot of the same presentation that we made last week, so if you did tune into the Select Board meeting last Tuesday, this might be a repeat, but we're happy to delve into any questions that you might have on the budget. You do have copies of the budget books. I think there's a couple still remaining to be picked up at Town Hall, so John Papalardo and Kristen need to pick up their books. Just a reminder to them if they're watching this meeting or tuning in sometimes later, but we do have those for them. The budget book is also available online, and I'll be going through some of that a little bit later during the presentation. It's a digital budget book. For those of you who have computer access, for those of you who don't have computer access, we will still have a printed book available as you have it today. So apologies that the font is a little bit small and difficult to read. We're working on that right now. IT told me that he started to increase the font from a 12 font to 14, so hopefully that will be better in the future. So tweaking it out. It's a brand new platform this year, and we hope to be going green next year and having it mostly being available online, where you can print out certain copies of anything that you want to see in more detail. You can print out just one department or one division, one budget line item. So I'm very excited about it. But without further ado, we'll go into our presentation, and we'll run through this, and we'll probably stop and pause in the middle for any questions that you might have. So we always start with the financial or the fiscal position, the state of the town, an overview of the 2024 budget summary transmittal, and again, talking about the new digital budget book for FY 2024. And on the screen is a link to the budgets, and as you might recall, everything budget is in Budget Central on the website, so all the past budgets are there, the budget messages and presentations. So we're continuing under our COVID-19 financial plan. Again, the pandemic is still around. We all know that COVID-19 is still here. We've recovered from it very successfully, but we still have to keep that in mind should things turn for the worse. And also not knowing what's going to happen with the economy in the future. We've sort of looked at whether or not there might be a recession coming or a slowdown in the economic growth. Our property values remain high. The highest valuation ever was for FY 2023 at over $9 billion. Our tax rate, $3.88 for the current fiscal year. So again, reflecting those high property values and not taxing to the absolute maximum that we could. Our AAA bond rating was affirmed again in March 7th, 2022. Again, that was the third AAA affirmation under COVID-19, so we're very happy about that. Reserves are stable to FY 2023. Capital projects, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we're working through that in the budget process, what's been completed, what's scheduled, and what we might be bringing forward to town meeting in May 2023. Our OPEB funding strategy, the 1.5% reallocation of that land bank 3% surcharge, so the half of that to OPEB has been very successful, and we continue to look to fund OPEB at $150,000 from the overlay surplus each year. Budget and financial policies reviewed. We'll be looking at reviewing a couple of items, just making free cash a minimum of 3 to 5% of the operating budget, as well as the housekeeping item of changing the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. And then budget summits, again, we provide those multi-year forecasts each fall in October, that begins the budget season, and we put out a 5-year forecast moving forward, so we update those as we move through the budget process as well. Our budget summit was held on October 25th with the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and Monomoy Regional School District. Again, the collaboration between management and the boards. The budget directive was strategic budgeting for the future, moving away from, or continuation, I should say, of our resilient and sustainable budget, which was FY 2023. The process and calendar, we looked at our revenue and our expense trends. Again, as we mentioned, the long-range forecast, and then our budget and financial policies update. So FY 2021 was our budgeting in the unknown when COVID hit. And then in 2022, we had still the COVID core services budget. Again, being very new, coming out of just starting to recover from COVID. FY 2023, we did have a growth budget for budgeting for a resilient and sustainable future. As you recall, we did add some positions for the current fiscal year, which we had first proposed prior to the pandemic for FY 2021. And we had proposed new positions at that time. We cut everything out of the budget. We really slashed the budget at that time because we didn't know what was going to happen. And so for FY 2024, again, we're requesting additional staff to help complete some of the objectives, the goals and objectives that the board has set for us, and complete some of the projects and provide the same amount of services for everyone in town without unnecessarily burdening staff and being able to accomplish some of these things. FY 2024 is strategic budgeting for the future as we look to the future to try to reach these accomplishments and the goals for the community and have a sustainable year-round community for everyone. So moving on, the town's budgetary components. As we always talk, we need to have a balanced budget to present to town meeting. Our revenues must support all of our expenditures. So we look first at the revenue outlook, tax levy being our greatest source of revenue. Our local receipts, which I am pleased to report is going back to 85% of the prior year actual, so that's going up quite a bit for FY 2024, and other available funds. And the good news on this is that our revenues are able to support our projected expenditures without increasing the tax levy. So we're looking to keep the tax levy level to FY 2023. Expenditures, the general operating budget, our educational assessments, which are in draft form right now, our water operating budget funded through water rates, and the 5-year capital plan funded through available funds, no use of the tax rate for the 5-year capital plan. And then we have other capital and community priority items. So those are the separate articles for consideration, and we'll touch base on some of those. And then our capital priorities and our 5-year capital plan moving out to FY 2028. I have a hard time saying 2028 all the time. The FY 2024 budget, again, the budget book, we have the budget narratives in there, our budget statements. You can see organization charts for each department as well as for the entire town. Our staffing history is listed under each department. The FY 2024 capital improvement plan, requests and inventories at the end of the book under the capital budget. And again, we mentioned earlier Budget Central, where we have the budget book, any budget updates are in there, our multi-year financial forecasts and policies, our fleet listing, which is the list of all of our vehicles and boats, and then the debt schedule moving out. Okay, our digital budget book. This is kind of a hard item to read, but the digital budget book will have lots of charts in it, and you can see the charts in the budget book that you've seen. So this is exactly what you is on the website, is in your book, but you can break it down and look by different departments rather than flipping through. However, in the budget book, there's a nice table of contents where you can look at the first page, and it will tell you if you want to see snow and ice, you go to page 241. So, no more flipping through section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. It's all numeric in order, so kind of easier to navigate, I think. And we'll go through some of this towards the end, unless, I think I should do that now? You want to see the budget, the digital budget book right now?
Sure.
Okay, let me just go into that. So the digital budget book. So, sure I can get there, okay. Oh, I have to put my other one down. Or maybe sorry, bear with me. Nope, still in my presentation. All right, we'll change to the end. I'm not as savvy as my IT department is. Okay, so moving forward, we'll talk about I'll do the digital budget book after I make the presentation. Sorry about that. So FY 2024, again, a balanced budget, strategic budgeting for the future. So the 2024 budget highlights, as I just mentioned, a sustainable service budget. So again, the same services provided as in FY 2023, however, with some enhanced staffing to deliver those services to everyone. So the operating budget without our educational assessments is coming in at $37,761,514 for an increase of 7.6% over FY 2023. However, as we just stated, that this is funded through available revenues with no impact to the tax rate. And that is because we've increased our local estimated receipts to offset the amount that we raised through the tax rate. So if values were to stay the same, at this point, we're looking at a tax rate of $3.88 for FY 2024, same as FY 2023. So the funding recommendations include, as I just mentioned, enhanced staffing of 7.5 full-time equivalents to carry out the level and sustainable services. And also that's fulfillment of the Select Board's community priorities, their objectives and initiatives for calendar year 2023 or FY 2024. The capital plan is recommended at $3,674,000, just at 9% of the range per our financial management policies, 9% of the operating budget, and again, funded through free cash and other available funds, no use of the tax levy. So here's our revenues. You can see property tax is remaining just about level, and our local receipts are going up by $1,642,000, so a 21.5% increase in the local estimated receipts. And we looked back over 3 years, and we feel that that is sustainable. It's 85% of the prior year actual. Hotel, motel, and meals and motor vehicle have been very strong over the past few years, so we don't feel that that is a risk. State aid at this time is level funded. We'll wait for the governor's budget to come out. We've been told that that will come out on March 1st. And then our other available funds, again, an increase in other available funds of about 25%. Much of that is free cash to fund the capital fund, as well as we have the payment from the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, $615,000, which will fund debt service. So we'll make a transfer into debt service for that. And then our expenditures, as just mentioned, municipal departments, the operating budget going up by 7.75%. At this time, based on the draft budgets, we're looking at the educational assessments to go up about 1.75%. Our water department with capital is decreasing, except for maybe a separate article, which would be borrowing article. So that's going down almost 11%. Capital budget is up 43% funded at just about the max that it could be, funded at the maximum it could be per our policies. Our assessments, slight decrease over last year, 66,000. And then we have some placeholders for other articles, which the Select Board and the Finance Committee will be reviewing as we move through the budget process. At this time, usually when you see this chart showing where the revenue comes from, usually the tax levy is about 67%. Pleased to report that it's 60% for FY 2024 at this time.
Great.
So our revenue projections, we have our allowable growth, which is a Proposition 2.5, the 2.5% increase plus new growth. So that's estimated to be about 1.26 million.
It's
Our local
amazing.
receipts, 85% of the prior year actual versus 57% in FY 2021 and 82% for FY 2022. So we do monitor this. And then stated, as mentioned, was level to the FY 2023 budget. And here you can see, back in FY 2020, prior to the pandemic, we were estimating local estimated receipts at 6.5 million. With the pandemic, we slashed those, not knowing what was going to happen for FY 2021, down to about 5 million, and then slowly increased them by 1.2 million for FY 2022, another 1.4 million in FY 2023, and then increasing up to 9,270,000 for FY 2024 for the budget. Our other available funds, offsets, free cash, we're looking at 6.42 million program for placeholders. Free cash was just certified today at 7.48 million or 7.49 million. So we just got that, so we have that to use. And some of the items that will be funded through free cash are the capital budget, $3,414,000. We're talking about the wastewater capital fund. As you recall, a number of years ago, we had requested that the Harwich IMA funds, the funds that we received from the town of Harwich for their coming onto the wastewater treatment plant, the capacity, we have milestone payments. We received the first one back in July of 2017, and that, per the Department of Revenue, closed to free cash. And it's been covered in free cash ever since then. So we had presented an article back in 2019 to segregate those funds into a capital stabilization fund for wastewater. Unfortunately, it did not receive a positive vote of the Finance Committee. I think you were split on where to recommend it, and it ultimately failed at town meeting. So we'd like to bring that back and have that dedicated for wastewater capital expenses. There are certain expenses that don't qualify for the 0% interest loans through the state revolving fund. So then we have to go out and issue general obligation bonds at anywhere from probably now 3.5% to 4.5% interest rates. So if we could pay for those costs through this money, that would alleviate that borrowing and save the town money in the long run. We also have 3 additional milestone payments to come in. As a matter of fact, we just received one, another $1.5 million last couple weeks ago, and we'll have 2 more after that. So we'd like to segregate those funds to pay for those costs and not have to borrow money for the design and engineering costs related to wastewater.
Excuse me a second, Alex.
Yes.
Andy?
Alex, so therefore the 7 million plus that you just mentioned as being recently certified as free cash includes how much in Harwich IMA?
2.265 million.
But we just received another payment?
We just received another payment, and if we don't do anything prior to the end of the fiscal year, that will close to free cash again.
As well?
Yes.
What did we just receive?
We just received 1.5 million for the milestone payment, and we received 2.4 million for the pump station that we needed to increase the capacity for Harwich to come onto our system.
So, I mean, certainly last year we explored the idea perhaps of prepaying some of the outstanding debt. And the proposal now is to go a stabilization fund for payment of future debt obligation?
It could be used for payment of future debt obligations, or it could be used not to borrow. So rather than prepaying debt, we would just not incur any debt for the design and engineering costs associated with wastewater.
So we would have to appropriate out of that fund for whatever
Yes.
the proposal was.
Yes. Anything into a stabilization fund requires a 2/3 vote out at town meeting for a particular purpose. So it's not just there to use.
No, I
as-
understand.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I was trying to remember how much was left.
Yeah, so, we do have the 2.265 that we received, and then the 1.5.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Could I ask, does Harwich still owe us any money?
Yes.
How much?
We have 2 more milestone payments of $1.5 million, and then they will also be paying for the O&M, the operating and maintenance costs, which is based on the percentage of the flow that comes in. We haven't seen those, and we don't know what that will be. That will be variable depending on flow.
And those monies are due when?
The first O&M, I think, is due, I think it's quarterly upon flow. Excuse me. And I don't think that has started yet, so we're waiting to see. We expect that to come in sometime this year, this fiscal year.
I'm sorry to keep asking these same questions. You expect it to come in, and if it doesn't come in, where does that leave us?
Well, we will bill them, and it's in the intermunicipal agreement that they will pay that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did someone else have just one more thought? Can you explain what you said about the pump station again, please, Alex?
Because we had to increase the size of the pump station for Harwich to come on, Harwich agreed, and there was an amendment to the intermunicipal agreement to pay for that cost, the incremental costs. So they paid us, I think, $2.3 million. Yeah, so we have, we just received the second milestone payment, and then we have another milestone payment in 2024, and then another one in 2026. Both of those are at $1.5 million.
So this is the capital gateway for them, in other words,
That was the-
versus the
yes.
flow.
Yeah, that was the capacity purchase fee. And then we received the second the first payment, the only payment for the pump station. We just got that in. So we had a total of about $3.8 million come in a couple weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions before Alex continue?
Joanne.
Barbara?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Alex, backing up to the free cash, we changed that to the wording to minimum. Does that have anything to do with our bond rating, or why did we change that?
We're recommending that change. And the reason we did that is because it's free cash. Bond rating companies love free cash because it's considered a reserve. So it means that the town did well. But we've been consistently above the 3 to 5%, and we want to make sure that it's a minimum of 3 to 5% because we are above it. Not that it hurts us, but I think there was some concern that because the policy said between 3 and 5%, if we were above it, that might be a risk. It's not a risk. Our financial advisors don't see it as a risk because they see anything above as being positive. But if we change the word to minimum, I think it corresponds to more of our actuals, what has actually happened.
And that was even before we had all the money from Harwich, the IMA funds, that we were consistently above 3 to 5%?
No, actually, back in 2010, during the recession, we were about 1.7. So when we first looked, when the town manager and I met with our financial advisors and first looked at these policies, we looked at where we had been. So we had been between 3 and 5%. So that's why it was set at that level at that time.
Free cash, just to make sure that I understand, are funds that were in a budget one year that weren't used, so they just, at the end of the year, if they haven't been used, they are designated as free cash, and we get to use them for pretty much anything we want after that?
Free cash it's complicated. That's one of the things that makes up free cash. Free cash is made up of budgetary turnbacks. So you said if we appropriated $100,000 in a budget and they spent 90, we would have $10,000 of free cash. That's one component. The other component is our estimated receipts in excess. Our actual receipts in excess of our estimated local receipts. So if we said that we were going to get $1 million in motor vehicle, say that's the only one we got, $1 million, and we ended up with $1,100,000, then we would have $100,000 in free cash from there. So you'd have $100,000 and then $10,000 in turnbacks, you'd have $110,000. Now, if you had free cash carryover from the prior year of $10,000, then you would have $120,000 in free cash to carry forward, to be certified or submitted for certification to the Department of Revenue.
So free cash is a sort of thing that a banker would love to see or a bond rating agency, but taxpayers wouldn't necessarily love a lot of free cash.
And this committee has made that, this is something the chair and I tend to disagree on, politely disagree on. That, you know, I like free cash because it's good financial planning. I mean, we try not to have turnbacks, really high turnbacks, and I can say that in FY 2022, I think our turnbacks were less than 2% of the budget. So that's budgeting pretty close, not knowing what's going to happen. Our local estimated receipts, again, we were very conservative with the pandemic, so that's why free cash came in so high for the last few years. We're increasing those local estimated receipts to reduce the burden from the tax levy. So again, this is trying to keep the tax levy at the same level it is right now by increasing those local estimated receipts and budgeting as close as we can to what we expect the expenditures to be.
So then bringing that all around, free cash is going to be a much purer figure if we get the IMA funds from Harwich out of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. Those are really important facts for us all to remember. What makes up free cash and how it can be used.
Yes, and that's important to note too, is that a lot of people think that free cash is a slush fund sitting there for anything. It has to be voted at town meeting. We can't use it without a vote and appropriation.
I have one more
Yes,
question, if I
Norma.
may. With all of these strictures and changes that had to be made because of COVID, would any of them now have they become enhancement figures, and are they going to be used for a purpose other than what they're intended? In other words, we had to make these changes because of constraints. Were those changes helpful, and would they be continued now?
I don't think so. I mean, when we pivoted the budget when COVID hit in March 2020, when we presented the budget, we were ready to go, and all of a sudden we had to totally scrap the budget, basically, and say, we don't know what's going to happen. We knew restaurants weren't going to be open. People weren't visiting. We didn't know what was going to happen to our local estimated receipts. We didn't know what was going to happen with motor vehicles. We didn't expect people to be buying vehicles, if you could find one. So again, we pivoted and we cut the budget and we cut our local estimated receipts. What we didn't factor in was that a lot of people moved down here and started working remotely. And then as we started to recover from the pandemic and things started opening up, we had a lot more people around. And so our economy really did bounce back rather quickly, I think quicker than some other areas of the country.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward. All right, some of our other available funds or offsets are under what's known as receipts reserved for appropriation, meaning that they have to be voted at town meeting. So we have the Waterways Improvement Fund. We're programming about $250,000, which is normal every year, to fund the Harbor Master capital and operating budgets. The Railroad Museum Fund operating costs this year is going up to $3,000. They requested an increase, so direct offset to their budget. The PEG access funds, these are the cable funds that come in, and this $150,000 to fund Channel 18's capital and operating budgets. And then our sale of lots, graves, and trust fund, $35,000 to fund some of the cemetery capital and operating as well. Other available funds are the revolving funds, where we have the recreation revolving, where the receipts for some of those recreation programs go right into the revolving fund, and they expend directly from the revolving fund. And same for the shellfish revolving, and those don't require a town meeting vote for the amounts. Those are just direct receipts pay for the programs. Chapter 90, our Highway State Aid Fund. Excuse me. We get about $347,000 each year. We did have quite a large balance previously. We've spent that down for some equipment as well as paving and roadway improvements. So we still have about $300,000 that we could spend each year, so we'll look to program that in. Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, this is that 2.75% on the room occupancy tax that is paid for all Cape Towns. And this is for our pre-existing debt. So we were awarded $6.15 million over 10 years, payable annually at an amount of $615,160. So we'll look to transfer that out of this fund, the Water Protection Fund, and fund the debt service for FY 2024, or at least $615,000 of it. And then ARPA, our American Rescue Plan Act funds. We'll be looking at tentative for the 31st next week on how we can use some of those ARPA funds. We have $600,000 in ARPA funds for the town. We have additional ARPA funds from the county, as well as we're waiting to see if the county has any more grant programs, because they have another $21 million available for grants, and how they're going to distribute that to the 15 cities and towns on Cape Cod. So more to come on that.
May I have one more question?
Yes.
I don't mean to belabor a fact. The Cape and Islands American Rescue Plan, do we have things that are in the budget that we want to do but have not yet budgeted funds for them? Or do we have budgeted funds but are not yet spent?
Under the ARPA plan?
Yes.
Yeah. Under ARPA, we have funds that we've received. We have not specified a use for them. We didn't budget them. This is just money that came to us.
Right.
So we did spend, I think, $18,000 on something for ARPA, but there are other items that we could fund through the ARPA Act, and as I mentioned, we'll be bringing that before the Select Board. We have some of the capital items that are looking at standalone articles could be funded through ARPA. Some of the, I know that the Finance Committee is looking at the electronic voting for town meeting, where you press a button instead of raising your hand, and that could be funded through ARPA, so we'll be looking at that as well.
Thank you.
So the FY 2024 revenue, again, the revenue estimated levy limit is just over $44 million. We're not looking at taxing that at all. We're looking at leaving about $5.6 million in excess levy capacity at this time, or if we bring something forward to be used by the levy, it will be voted separately by separate article at town meeting. Then we have our estimated local receipts, again, 9.2 million, 85% of the prior year actual, and our estimated other available funds.
Excuse me 1 minute, Alex, just for information maybe of our new members. The excess tax levy comes from the concept that was established back in, it was 1980-something,
83?
that towns, towns and cities could not increase their levy, their tax levy on their citizens more than a 2.5% from the previous years. This was to tamp down on what were thought of then as runaway local real estate taxes on the Commonwealth citizens. So that's what we're talking about. We have stayed within our 2.5% limit on our raises of our taxes. And if we don't, we need to go to town meeting and get their approval to go beyond that 2.5% increase.
Yeah, that's an important note, and I just want to point out too that that doesn't necessarily mean that your tax bill will be limited to a 2.5% increase. Right. We get that quite a bit in the treasurer's office, but again.
And let me interrupt. And the reason for that is the evaluation of the property seems to consistently increase in Chatham.
Right. And the Chatham has not had to have an operating override, which would increase the levy limit in many, many years. So I know when I first arrived here, I think our excess levy capacity was about $17,000, and it's now up to $5.6 million. So that's good financial planning. So.
Andy.
Somewhat associated with that, Alex, I mean, we've just gone through a reval for property assessed values, or we're in the midst of it, or?
We do revaluations, we do interim adjustments every year. The reval now is once every 5 years is mandated by the Department of Revenue. We tend to do adjustments on a yearly basis because if you did it every 5 years, you would see an increase or, we try to smooth that increase out. Last year, the value of the town went up over 20%.
Right, but that was on one of these 5-year evaluations?
No, that was just the interim.
Just the interim? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Say that again, Alex, that increase on the valuation?
the increase for last year was over 20%. And again, that's just on an interim basis. I'm not sure when our next 5-year adjustment is done. I think we just had one done in 2021, maybe.
It was such a big jump, I could have sworn it was a,
Yeah, no, it's based on the sales, and that's it, because Massachusetts is full and fair cash value. So if, your neighbor sells a house for 500, if your neighbor sells a house for 1.5 million.
Let's be realistic.
What town am I in? For 1.5 million, and you have the exact same house in the exact same neighborhood, and you're valued at, 750,000, you can expect your value to go up the next year, because again, it's based on those actual sales. And the real estate market, as we all know, is very hot here in Chatham.
thank you.
Okay, so this is just a nice graphic that can show the hotel motel tax from 2021 to 2022 and the increase, and one of the reasons why we are increasing that so much for FY 2024. It's just, we can see that it warrants it now. Revenue policies decision for the select board, we always look at revenue diversion, whether there's an impact in estimated receipts. And this is if we take some of the estimated local receipts and divert them to a special revenue fund. As you recall, we did increase the room occupancy tax, the local share, from 4% to 6%. That will not have an impact because we did take those 2 additional percentage points and dedicate 1% to support the Chatham Elementary School and 1% to support housing. So that's a dedicated source, so there would have no impact on that. Short-term rental tax impact, the short-term working group just met and made their report tonight. They'll make their report tonight, so we'll see what comes out of that. And then the fiscal impact equity. We try to look at the effect of fees on the entire community. And when we look at all the departments, we look at their fees, what they cost, what we're charging our residents, and then the impact and whether it's equal around the community for everyone.
Andy?
Oh.
Maybe it fits in this spot in the conversation, I'm not sure. Sort of the idea of impact. There's been several years now of discussion about a change in the way we tax year-round residents versus seasonal residents. And one of the things I've done recently, because it's my fault, I haven't done it previously, is I looked at the assessor's department website and looked at all of the different real estate tax exemptions and credits and so forth that are available. And it seems like there's quite a list.
There are.
And it occurred to me, do we know how many of those are ever taken advantage of?
The assessors would have a list of who, takes advantage of the exemptions, I believe, and there are the veterans exemption, senior exemptions, et cetera. So
There are quite a few.
there's quite a few, and they're all available on their website, and they list everything to try and help taxpayers who might need assistance.
Well, I mean, certainly one of the arguments in favor of a differential tax for year-round versus seasonal was that some folks need the break on their taxes, but I wondered how many of them actually know about these different exemptions and how well they're used now. And then further, should we propose anything else?
I think this, the Select Board Chair Dykens has requested an agenda item on what might be available, not looking at, not as the residential exemption, but in lieu of the residential exemption, I should say, yeah.
Right, which I would be very interested in, something in lieu of that.
Yeah, I've done some research on other towns in the Commonwealth and what they've looked at. So most of them, have their exemptions or their assistance based on the circuit breaker, which is available through the state, the senior circuit breaker. So I'm compiling all that and trying to get that before the select board sometime before too long.
And yes, Norma.
To go back to what Andy was saying, are these exemptions generally known? I have no idea where they are, how they're run, what they consist. Are they generally known, or do you have to inquire?
The assessor's office is happy to answer any questions, and they do have them up on their website, but I know that not everyone has access to a website. And we do have, I think, pamphlets at the town office buildings.
Okay, thank you.
And we do highlight them as well when we have the tax classification hearing. And I don't think we mentioned them at the budget summit, but we can see if we can get,
I just wonder how many of these programs are on the books but are not known by very many people. I realize that's a person's ignorance, and you should find out. But it may be quite new to several people, and maybe we need to know a way to get that information to those who actually need it.
that might be a good thing to do prior to sending out the tax bills in the fall, is to let people know that they're available at that time. So I'll make a mental note of that, and I think
Thank you.
Joanne is writing that down too.
You know, Alex, of all the services we offer, I think that because it affects so many of the people in Chatham and people who need it, I think we should use some of the people we're looking at hiring to help out. We need to get that information out to everyone in Chatham. The circuit breaker tax break for seniors has been available since the 80s when I was in the State House. And I haven't heard anything about that. I think I passed some information on to Selectman Nicastro about that because it's a help. And I don't know of anyone else that I've run into in Walpole, other than what you just said, who knows about that amongst other. There are some helps for people who have to hook up to the sewer, a mandated hookup. There is a program through your mass tax return. It's called Schedule Z, if I remember right, where over a period of years, you take a certain percentage of what you paid for that mandated hookup, and you get a tax credit, which is just like money.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that we really ought to get serious about doing. That serves all of our people.
And that's an important point. And I know that for the sewer hookup, I know that when people need to hook up, they do let them know about that program on the Schedule Z, as well as any low-interest loans that might be available through the county. Barnstable County used to have.
They do have that, yeah.
Low-interest loan. So that's important to note. But we can, again, I think the the Center for Senior Living, Senior Active Living? Center for
Hard to
Active
remember.
Living. I have to remember it all the time. I can't call it Council on Aging. They do have information on the circuit breaker, as well as probably many of these other programs. And, we'll try to get the word out.
Well, getting it out is what's
Yeah.
important.
And if I may,
Andy.
I'll acknowledge I'm a senior, but I'm also interested in how this might apply to younger families. And,
Right.
I mean, many of those exemptions are senior qualified. Now, I'm trying to see if there's anything else we can do. That's not necessarily that kind of program.
Yeah, and again, we looked at, the town did implement the Dr. Florence Selden pre-K
Yes.
program, which
Correct.
helps 3- and 4-year-olds, and I think that that's a huge help for some of our younger families, provided they have children. And then we also do have the Child Care Network voucher program that's income qualified. So, we do try to do that. But again, when we talk about this, and, if you're looking at equity among the fee equity, we're trying to keep the fees down, knowing that, it helps some of our neediest residents if we keep the fees low.
I acknowledge that, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, our expenditures, we're looking at the priorities, any additional services, and plus resiliency efforts. Again, we always mention debt because it's per our debt schedule, so if we're proposing any new debt to move forward or borrowing authorizations at town meeting, we would program that in to see what the impact would be for future years. It will not hit all in one year, obviously, or probably not the first year, but it would hit in future years. And then education, again, per the Monomoy Regional School District Agreement and the Cape Cod Tech, both of them are in their draft budgets right now and will not probably have a final budget until March after the governor's numbers come out. Okay, so moving into the FY 2024 budget overview, we have the operating budget of the town, mentioned $37,761,514. School assessments of just over $10 million for the Monomoy Regional and Cape Tech, and that does include Chatham's portion for the elementary school per the amended agreement where each town takes care of its own elementary school. And then the water budget, $3,915,551, and the capital budget, $3,674,000. And just a chart showing the pie chart where everything is going. So again, education is 19% of the total, public works 16%, public safety 15%, and debt service 14%, and then declining from there. So the factors for FY 2024, when we look at our contractual obligations, our fixed costs, and what we call our budget drivers. Again, the move of small annual capital items moved out of the capital article into the operating budgets. Our town facilities, maintenance and resiliency, the continued needs for those. State and federal mandates, OSHA is one of those. Our OPEB, again, just trying to make sure that that's funded at an acceptable level as we are paying down that liability. Our debt schedule, and then our educational assessments. So our operating budget, our proposed staffing for FY 2024, we'll run through some of these. And these are listed in the budget book under, I believe it's at the very beginning.
Page 17.
Oh, Andy knows it right away. Page 17 has some of it, but it's also, this chart is begins on page 39 as well. So under general government, we're looking for human resources. We're looking for a full-time department assistant, and that would be one new position in HR. Currently, we have a position funded that is a 50% with HR, 50% with the town manager's office. Moving that position fully into the town manager's office to meet the needs of that office, and having a dedicated assistant in the human resources department because it's very difficult to get everything done for the one person who's in that office right now. And then that office is also, human resources is requesting a seasonal assistant to assist with onboarding of seasonal employees. We have over 100, probably 120 seasonal employees every year who come on between, early May, right up until July 4th, and then, they turn around in late August and they're leaving us again. So it's quite a bit of work to get all those employees onboarded and the paperwork, get them all set up. So that's the reason for the seasonal assistant. And the seasonal assistant's, $12,600, and the fiscal impact for the department assistant would be just over $54,000.
Excuse me, Alex, but just for the beginning of all of these salary figures, mentally, we need to add the benefits and an average of 15 to 20,000. We mentally can add to the 54,000 to know what the full cost of a new employee is.
We're listening to salaries here, but we do say that the benefits is usually about $15,000 per person, and we've programmed that into the benefits budget.
I see that, but it's helpful as we go along
Yes.
to see when we're talking about a new hire, to know exactly what the new hire is costing the town.
And seasonal and part-time would not be
Right.
benefit eligible, so just to keep that in mind as well.
Okay, thank you.
The town clerk is requesting a part-time department assistant to assist with the expanded voting. We now have early voting, mail-in voting. So she's requesting a 19-hour per week part-time, non-benefited position to assist with that, as well as some of the other items that they need to take care of in the town clerk's office. Airport, this is a new position, an airport administrative assistant who would serve as a liaison to and provide administrative support for the airport commission. This person would not report to the airport manager. It would, it's a town position, and it is part-time. Currently, we have Terry Whalen, who is the liaison to the airport commission, and the airport commissioner has said that a lot of his time, he's spending a lot of time on things that really are better suited for this type of position. There's a lot of grants out there, grant reporting, grant writing, not grant writing, but grant reporting, financial reporting, just processing the invoices. So that is what this position would be doing. And we'd be looking to see that if we could fund that through the airport revolving funds as those fees increase. So that would look to be an offset rather than through 100% of the tax levy. But we have to look at the revenues first before we move forward with that. And then moving on, the public safety. The police department has requested 4 seasonal positions, community service officers. And these would be civilian positions, so they would not have arrest powers or be not sworn positions, sworn police positions, but they would be civilian to engage with the public, really provide informations, support to the police department, help with downtown parking, and they would mostly be downtown, maybe at the Fish Pier as well, to assist residents and visitors alike, navigating Chatham and sort of being ambassadors and helping out. And they could help out with traffic details if they were needed downtown, band concerts, etc.
If I may, Alex, on the police department, are there any provisions for any police officer who is available to do all of these other things as well, to be in the schools or to have some responsibility for education?
We do have a school resource officer. We created that several years ago. So we have a dedicated school resource officer.
My question is that school's resource officer available at any time in the schools or only in an emergency or in a crisis situation?
Anytime.
Okay, thank you.
And he's over there quite a bit, as I understand.
Barbara.
Thank you, ma'am. Alex, would these civilian ambassadors that are working downtown have the ability to put parking tickets on the gargantuan vehicles that are continually parking over the line?
Yeah, that is one of the ideas. And if you might recall, years ago, we always had seasonal, the summer cops. Unfortunately, it's difficult. We can't do that anymore. It's so hard to do. So these 4 positions would kind of be the summer cops. And the idea is to have them, maybe they are students in criminal justice studies and want to become police officers. So this would be a good way to integrate them, for future. So looking to the future.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay, so moving on to the next slide. The transfer station, DPW transfer station, they requested 2 additional full-time equivalents for FY 2024. One was a heavy equipment operator, and one was another gate attendant, a second gate attendant. So the recommendation is to move forward with the second gate attendant, about $50,970 without benefits. And again, we've had a hard time hiring seasonal gate attendants and seasonal recycling coordinators down at the transfer station. So this position would, relieve they partner with the current gate attendant by having 2. That way they could cover vacations if someone's out. Currently, if the gate attendant isn't there, we have to take someone off of one of the machines, one of the heavy equipment operators off of a machine and cover the gate check. And that is really not the most fiscally prudent way to operate. And especially you have very long-serving employees at the transfer station, so they do have quite a bit of vacation as well. So this way we would be providing additional support not for the heavy equipment operator, but for the gate attendant, as well as some of the recycling and other light duties down at the transfer station. So again, just recommending the gate attendant for FY 2024. The DPW is also requesting a mechanic, vehicle repair, special equipment operator who would assist. We currently have one mechanic, special equipment operator, but for some of the regulations require that we have to have two mechanics in order to provide services and service our vehicles. So we're looking to add that, and this would also help with our emergency management with the generator repair and maintenance, the light generator repair and maintenance, rather than having to contract out and have service contracts for some of those routine maintenance items. And then moving through DPW, the grounds division, cemetery, actually it's the Cemetery Commission, had requested to increase the time from their part-time cemetery administrator to a full-time position. So we're looking at the job description, the duties of that. Currently, cemetery administrator meets with the families, sells plots, etc. So we're looking to define the job description as what would be handled. But again, there's a lot of administrative work. There's a lot of work to do on we have a system for lots and graves where you can put it into the system. So that needs to be done. So we'll be looking at that, as well as any grants that might be available for cemeteries, et cetera. And this person would report to the DPW director. And then in DPW, continuing, another full-time department assistant. This was first requested under the water department, but we have two full-time administrative assistants in the water department, so we thought this was better suited under all of DPW to coordinate in the different divisions, the transfer station, the highway, cemetery facilities, snow and ice, and all the reporting, because there's quite a bit of reporting that needs to be done in DPW for these various divisions. And that's $50,970 as well. And then community services, moving from DPW to community services. We had first proposed a new position of a licensed clinical social worker for the community services to coordinate between the Council on Aging, the police department, the fire department, and recreation. And this was sort of, soup to nuts, youth up to the older generation. So when we brought it to the select board, they were supportive of two. One dedicated for youth and one dedicated for adults. So we're proposing two community services clinicians, one who would be just devoted to youth and families, and the other for adults of all ages. And this person would, as I said, coordinate between the different departments, COA, police, fire, and recreation, because there is a lot of coordination when someone is in need. And if you did not hear Leah Lacrosse and Chief Mike's presentation, I would suggest you go back and listen to it, because it was very well done.
No.
If that position were to be funded, how would that work with the school personnel who are doing somewhat the same things?
That's one of the concerns, is that we really don't have a dedicated person here in Chatham to help Chatham students. Monomoy Regional does have a licensed social worker who's funded through Harwich. And unfortunately, that person can only help Harwich families and not Chatham families, and that's why this is so needed here in Chatham.
Thank you.
Alex, can you give us just a quick idea of that situation you were talking about between the chief, the police chief, and
Leah.
And yeah,
Leah?
oftentimes, and I see Jill might pitch in here, but oftentimes the police and or the fire will get a call that someone is having a mental issue, and it's not really a police issue, but there's no one to call. So they call the police department, and so the police department has to show up. And their hands they're limited with what they can do. As I understand it, they sort of have to take the person into custody, take them up to, then the fire department transfers them over to Cape Cod Hospital, to the psych ward. And after that, they lose touch. It's out of their hands. It's a lot of paperwork for them. It takes them away from their regular patrol et cetera. If we had a licensed social worker, that person could follow up and actually probably prevent this from happening and even getting to this, because as the chief said, this should not be a police action. This should be helping people prior to that. So it's more of an intervention. So it doesn't get to be a criminal action where we're taking people and transporting them somewhere or locking them up somewhere.
I see. Thank you.
And then for natural resources, there were 2 positions requested, a health and housing inspector to help with the housing inspections and short-term rentals regulations. And again, the short-term rentals will be coming before the select board tonight. So we put that on hold for further review. We weren't sure if that was warranted until the short-term working group finished up with their duties and their investigation and reported back to the select board. And the Harbor Masters Division had asked for a second boat operator, a marine mechanic, due to the mooring manager position, spending more time doing the moorings and the administrative work for those mooring renewals and mooring enforcement. But again, more information was needed to look at the whole department as, what duties are needed and who's doing what. So that position is also on hold, pending further review right now. So the total for the 7 FTEs being added to the budget, and this is all included in that number that we gave you when we presented the budget, the $37,530,045. So then we go into other changes of note in the operating budget, specifically some of the expense line items. And some of these I've singled out just because they might be a large percentage amount increase from FY 2023 to 2024. They might be a small dollar amount, like the parking clerk of $2,000, but it's a large percentage. So you might flag it as saying, why is it going up so much? The town manager, there's a large percentage, but it's just moving that shared position from 50% in human resources back to 100% in the town manager's budget. In the audit, that's going up by $20,000, and that is to implement a fixed asset program for our single audit that we need for federal funds. And also, we've been having to have a second audit done for the library, so that's costing us up to $4,000 or $5,000. So we've built that into the budget for next year. Parking clerk, again, increase for parking ticket applications, $2,000. And then the sticker office, permit office, an increase in the cost for printed stickers, $10,600. So we'll look to see how we move forward with that, whether we stay with the same program or if there's a more fiscally, a cheaper way to do it, so to speak. The public safety, police department, again, the increase of $38,000, and that's for training and for uniforms, and some of that is for those 4 community service officers. Public safety, the fire department, increased costs for medical supplies, as well as our ambulance billing. Even though our ambulance billing, we expect the revenues to go up, there is an increase in the cost for that. Under the Harbor Masters Division of Natural Resources, we have a new line item for the trap dock ice machine, which will require maintenance. Also, vehicle and equipment maintenance has increased over the current fiscal year. Again, the cost of some of these items are going up every day.
Alex, excuse me, is
Yep.
that trap dock ice machine maintenance or to buy a trap dock ice machine?
No, that's for the maintenance of the trap dock ice machine.
And vehicle and equipment, other?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
And all these details are listed in the line items in the book. I've just picked out some of them and reasons why.
Excuse me, Tommy.
Alex, with the ice machine, does the town make money from that ice machine?
I don't believe so. I have to check on that.
So the town provides the ice machine and the ice, and they get nothing in return?
For the trap dock, we are receiving the ice machine through a grant.
Sorry?
We're receiving the ice machine through a grant, so the town's not acquiring it. But I believe that there was to be some arrangements for it to be available to fishermen for packing.
But they don't pay for the ice.
I need to look, I'll get back to you on that,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. I wrote that down too.
Alex, who has access to the ice machine?
I believe
Do they
it's,
pay for the ice they're using?
again, this is a new ice machine on the trap dock, and we'll check on the payment, and I believe it's just the fishermen who have access to it, or harbor master. Sorry, harbor master has access to it. We'll check on that and get back to you. On the DPW budget, again, we're expecting an increase in fuel costs, so an increase of $75,000 there. DPW, the principal projects and operations facilities, there's contractual increases for some of our HVAC, maintenance contracts, et cetera. Our electricity is going up, the contracted cleaning, and then just the cost of maintenance for all buildings has increased. So that's a large dollar amount there, almost $349,000. For DPW, increase for contracted services, we outsource our service contracts, so that's their work. And then the utility and maintenance costs, as our number of pump stations increases, it's also more electricity, et cetera. DPW, the transfer station, again, contracted services for CMAS, as well as some of our vehicle and equipment maintenance costs. And that's based on prior year actuals. Community services, the Council on Aging, increase for the Orleans daycare. We do not have adult daycare here in Chatham, so this is a $7,500 increase as more. They're looking to increase our costs as well as increase the number of Chatham residents who can attend. Employee benefits, health insurance, I think we touched on this a little bit, some of the new positions, as well as we're projecting an increase in health insurance, which should be released in the next few weeks. So we're looking at an increase in that budget of just over $307,000. And insurance, I don't know if any of you have received notification from your insurance carriers, but property insurance is going to go up substantially for coastal communities. So we have put in an increase of 20%. Hopefully that's enough for FY 2024.
Barbara?
Thank you, Joanne. Alex, for the Orleans daycare, is there a limit to the number of people that we can send there, and how many people are we sending there?
I don't recall how many we're sending there. I think there is a limit on how many we can send. For some reason, I thought it was about 15, but I can check on that.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Chairman.
Norma?
On the insurance, do those requests go out for bid?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're for the property insurance. Yeah, we went out a few years ago, and I've just asked for our 5-year loss run so we can go out again. We're looking at the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, MIA, is willing to come down and look at us, so we'll be sending that up. But right now, I've built this in, so yeah, we do try to remain competitive.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our educational assessments. We have the Monomoy Regional School District, again, draft assessments at this point. So that's based on the regional agreement as amended, and the figure that I had for the Chatham Elementary School for the difference had the regional agreement not been amended, it's about $651,000 for Chatham Elementary School. So we'll get more on that. The school committee will be presenting their budget to the select board on February 14th. And then the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, we're draft of $370,088. That includes the debt service, and there's an increase of one Chatham student to the tech for FY 2024. So again, presentation from Monomoy and Cape Tech on February 14th, 2023. They're going to go over proposed changes to the regional agreement. This mostly has to do with deleting all of the language that was included as part of the interim when we were in the interim before we fully regionalized. So it's mostly housekeeping language, no substantial changes. We made the substantial change to the financing agreement last year. And then their proposed budget, their total budget has a 3.6% increase at this time. And again, our Chatham assessment is going up different than that, but we'll wait till we receive the governor's numbers as well as the health insurance. These numbers could most definitely change. The budget will be finalized sometime, hopefully this week. Again, an increase of 1 Chatham student, so now 13 attending. And again, they're awaiting the health insurance vote and Chapter 70 figures from the governor. So moving on to our water department budget. Again, this is a separate article. So the total is a 7.75% increase to FY 2023, $3,915,551. Salaries, $245,994. Again, same amount of full-time equivalents, no additional personnel at this time. Expenses, $2,213,550. We do have overhead that goes to the general fund. That is money that accounts for the time that personnel in the general fund provide to support the water department. Perfect example is the treasurer's office collecting water bills. So, and then debt service, $1,137,234 for principal and interest. And our capital plan, over $15.5 million was requested. Those include some of those large dollar amount items, such as the belt filter press or the transfer station. So again, we're recommending $3,674,000. In the capital plan, we include all items for the overall financial picture. So you can see everything that's out there beginning in FY 2024 up to FY 2028. And again, recommending at 9% of the operating budget, not including any separate warrant articles. And as I mentioned, always funded through available funds and no impact on the tax rate. And here you can see it broken down by the different departments. So general government is requested $470,000, and we're proposing $390,000. Public safety, $240,000. We're proposing $240,000. Natural resources requested $1,050,000. $395,000 is being proposed in the capital budget with an additional $300,000 as a standalone article for dredging. Public Works without water, $11.5 million, and we're recommending $1,490,000. And then equipment, which goes across all departments. However, in your budget book, it's broken out by the different departments. So it's kind of nice to see that you can see how much DPW is requesting, how much natural resources is requesting in the back of the budget book. And so the equipment total, and that's for vehicles, et cetera, $1,159,000 is being recommended. And here's just showing the funding sources. So again, the majority from free cash, $3.4 million, waterways improvement funds, $65,000, sales cemetery lots, $10,000, our PEG access funds, $50,000, and then we have some prior year articles that are going to be closed out and repurposed to fund some of the capital items, and those are directly related to the department. The department that had these leftover articles are using them to fund new items.
Okay, Norma?
I'm sorry to have all these questions. On the free cash, is there an amount which must be left in there, or is it based upon the amount requested versus the amount in there?
There's no set amount that has to remain in free cash from year to year. However, we do recommend carrying over an amount of free cash to next year as a good fiscal policy. It's never good to spend it down to nothing because you don't know what's going to happen next year. So if we keep $250,000 in free cash moving forward, that gives us a good balance to move for next year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Alex, maybe it appears somewhere in here, but I haven't found it yet. In the water department specifically, How much of those expenses are related to the PFAS contamination?
We had, there is testing in the water department, so they do have testing, but we did have separate capital articles for PFAS last year, and there's more coming on PFAS because we'll be looking at a water treatment plant to take care of some of that. And we'll also be looking to see whether there's, grant funding and/or ARPA funds available for PFAS. This is I attended the Mass Municipal Association, and one of the doom and gloom workshops I went to was about PFAS, and it's just, we don't know what's coming down the pike.
Do you anticipate those articles for this fiscal year?
We'll be bringing them before the select board shortly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And speaking of our review criteria for some of our capital articles, preserve and enhance town assets, and water is definitely one of those assets. Increase efficiency and effectiveness of government. Our fiscal sustainability, again, will they generate revenue? Are there grants available? We always look on whether there's an impact on savings on the operating budget, an impact on the utilization by the public, and then the influence on local policy areas, what we've called the Chatham factor. So again, aesthetics and historic preservation, economic growth, public health and safety, our culture and recreational opportunities, as well as environmental sustainability. So here we have some of the other articles pending review. The community preservation projects, we've noted that in the capital budget, if something's eligible for CPA funding, the Community Preservation Committee has heard all their applications, and they'll be making their recommendations in the next several weeks. And then we have the town projects. We mentioned the first two previously, the Child Care Voucher Program and the Dr. Florence Selden Pre-K Funding Program. Child Care Voucher was funded at $100,000 this current fiscal year, and Dr. Selden's pre-K funding at $425,000, so we'll look at that same amount for next year. OPEB funding coming from overlay surplus, $150,000. We have a placeholder right now coming from free cash for housing. I'm not sure where we'll go with that, but we put in $500,000 as a placeholder. The Eldridge Public Library HVAC system, that's an amount to be determined. We originally thought it was going to be around $1 million, but it's probably going to be in well excess of that. Transfer station, we had talked about the transfer station improvements several years ago, and so that's moving forward. We're looking at the best way to complete that, whether to phase it in. I think there's 3 different phases, so we'll look to get that going. And then the belt filter press for the sewer plant, more to come on that, whether that moves forward now or later. That's about $4.8 million. And then the water treatment plant for the wells. So we need to look at that, as well as some other items that might be identified in the capital plan.
Alex, excuse me, but before we move on, let me say how much this committee has missed Dr. Florence Selden, speaking of her pre-K funding program. And we miss her greatly and are sorry that we've lost her.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. OPEB funding, we always talk about this because I know that this is a concern. As it shows up, it's a liability, and it is a liability of the town. But right now we have in the trust fund the balance of $3,765,000. And as I said, the reallocation of the land bank surtax has been quite successful. In FY 2022, we received just over $565,000. And year to date this year, $292,000. So if we double that for the second half tax bills, again, a very healthy influx into our trust fund to reduce our liability. Plus we have the $150,000 placeholder, and the next meeting of the OPEB trustees is February 23rd. So we'll be making our recommendation on that budget and whether how we're going to look, and we'll be getting a presentation from our Bartholomew, to financial Bartholomew, where our trust funds are held, and they'll be coming before the select board, I believe, on February 14th? Is that the 14th as well?
Barbara.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
Barbara has a question.
Alex, do you have any idea what the approximate outstanding balance of our OPEB liability is? And do you know, I mean, I feel like we've been doing really well saving up money for that, but do you know how we measure up in terms of other towns? How do we stack up against, I mean, pretty much every town in the Commonwealth has OPEB liabilities. Do we know how well we're doing?
Compared to other towns, I don't know. I think our liability right now is 17 million. I did have it in the, it's in the,
Book somewhere?
it's in the beginning of the book under the town manager's budget message on page 20. Our liability is 17,134,000.
And I can remember not too very long ago when it was 30 toward 40 million liability on our audit.
Yeah, and, well, that was prior to regionalization, so that did help us. But it does go up and down, and we get it, I'm waiting for the newest one to come in, so we'll see what happens with that one. All right, so looking at FY 2024 and beyond, again, the priorities, the policy issues and directives that the select board are looking at, our social infrastructure, our economic and community sustainability, again, the OPEB liability, our community initiatives, housing initiatives, coastal resiliency and climate change, COVID funding, drinking water supply to ensure adequate drinking water supply to meet demand, and wastewater.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Norma.
could you go back to that where you just were a minute ago and explain what is meant by the town's involvement and responsibility in social infrastructure?
I think, did you?
So we labeled it social infrastructure, and it's basically the community services, human services offerings that we do. So that includes the human services budget for the various programs for assistance, the Dr. Selden Family Support Program. It's kind of an umbrella title for a bunch of human services and community services types of programs we fund.
So this would primarily involve actions that were needed and requested by the town, for the town.
Yeah, and priorities that the select board have established.
So they would not necessarily be new programs initiated by the town.
We had, the last new program we initiated was the Dr. Florence Selden Family Preschool Support Program. That was last year. So this is a continuing of that, as well as the Child Care Voucher Program, which are two different sets of constituents that are served.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to the budget calendar. So we presented this to the select board last week, and you're seeing it today, a week later. The important date here is February 21st, when the Finance Committee makes its recommendation back to the select board. So this is your overall large comments. I know that we have DPW scheduled to come before you this coming Thursday. So Bob Rooney will be here to talk about that. We're going to try and get the larger departments in the next couple of weeks, so you have some idea of where we're at to make that recommendation. On March 1st, the Select Board approved budgets comes back to the Finance Committee, and then your recommendations, in order to be included into the warrant, have to be received by March 23rd, because the warrant closes on March 24th. And we've scheduled meetings for every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. at the currently, so it's at 2 p.m. We're trying to meet in this room. If it's not in this room, it's in the room next door.
Excuse me, Alex, so the 2 p.m., was that a decision after the Stephen sent out the question for all of us to discuss the difference between 1:30 and 2 p.m.?
I think he
Or
was,
1?
I think he was thinking 1:30 might be easier, but I don't know what everyone's availability is. I think if you could get back to him
Okay.
with what your preference is.
Sure.
But we'll schedule them for 2 o'clock right now. We are meeting at 2 o'clock on Thursday.
Okey-doke. Yep.
I will not be here Thursday.
Okay?
Eric has cancer treatments every Thursday.
And we wish good luck to him and to you. Sorry, it's been such a long road, but
Thank you.
wish you luck. I just have one final thought after and by the way, this was so thorough. Thank you, Jill and Alex. Through the years, this has evolved into something so thorough and accurate and easy to read. I want to thank you very much, but I'm left with, after looking at all of these suggestions and issues and budgets, that this past year, there have been 2 events that have really affected just about every single citizen in town. And that was the snowstorm, where we lost electricity and heat. And I think we want to make sure that we can step up to take care of each and every citizen at those times, just like we're trying to provide for them in our different programs, that we want to be prepared. The generators, I applaud that you're going to make sure that they're all serviced and ready to go, but to make sure that something that affects our whole town like that we're ready for it and can serve the whole town. The other one is the water shortage we had in the summertime and the limiting of the water supply to our citizens, which makes me think all the more that we've got to get a population notice about what increase we're going to have in our population and our residents, and how are we going to be able to service them with clean water now, not only now, but in the future. Clean water, flowing, plenty of water, and with no PFAS. And I think those are so important to each and every one of us. Andy?
Alex, if I may, I've been accumulating a couple of small questions. But the most recent one has to do with the slide you had for the FY24 and beyond. In other words, basically the 10 or so things that you had on there as priorities, apparently.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
saw that you just
I
got
can
out of
see
that.
Pull it back up.
But it would be probably very near the end.
Yep.
Yeah, that one. Oop,
It's coming.
okay, you're back. All right, good. Has town leadership done anything to prioritize those? In other words, to make choices within that list?
Well, these are all items that are important, and I think the select board will be having a special workshop on February 9th to talk about some of the capital items and priorities and what they want to see move forward. Because again, that's been one of the challenges is, we have these great ideas and we want to do this, but we need to move forward with some of them. And, I think right now, I'm looking at the list. I know OPEB liability is a priority, but it's kind of taking care of itself right now. So
Right.
that's, it's almost like we could check that off the list, but we don't want to lose sight of it. So that's why we keep listing them here.
Right. I understand that. I was curious whether the selectmen were going to tackle that, or the select board.
Yeah.
The other is in the same presentation on page 3, so way in the beginning. You had a comment about reserves being stable to FY '22. Did you really mean '22? So in other words, '23 and '24, they're unstable?
Well, no,
Or-
we're in 2023 right now.
I know.
So.
That's why it struck me.
I don't have any reserves right now. The reserves that closed out for FY 2022 were,
It's page 3.
yeah. So I see. Yeah, I mean, the reserves that carried forward into FY 2023, where we're at right now, were stable to what we had last year.
Okay, all right, thank you, because that raised the question in my mind about what about this year? What
Yeah,
about
so,
next year?
well, we won't know that until June 30th.
Okay. The other is in the printed book, which I thought was very helpful, except needing an eye chart. Page 6, there's a statement on the last line of the third paragraph, screenshot general fund summary online budget book. The town does not budget revenues, which is why FY '23 and '24 revenues are not included.
Right, and I've actually, if I can go, I'll go to the budget book now, the digital budget book. Yeah, we don't budget our revenues. I mean, I do, but we don't. This is a different platform, so getting into this platform is,
Okay, so, I mean, you're helping me to understand it then.
yeah.
because
So let me go to the budget book. So this is our digital budget book online. And, what preview? And anyone can get here, and it's available, the link is available on Budget Central and on our website, as I said. So here is what you're talking about, screenshot of the general fund summary. So I was looking at this chart. Now I can go to this chart, and I've actually changed this now because I finally figured out how to get the revenues in here.
okay, all right.
So here you can see, well, for '23, you don't see any revenues. But for '24, this green line is the revenues, and the blue line is our expenditures, and they equal. And that's our balanced budget.
Okay, right, so we'll call this a temporary problem.
So, yeah, it was, I couldn't figure it out, and I finally did, so.
Okay, all right, so we do budget revenues.
We do.
It's just, you know.
We have to budget revenues, and that's why we always say that we
That
have
was
a
getting-
balanced budget, and we look at our revenues, yes.
Only the federal government.
Thank you, that
Yes.
took care of those.
And I have one more thought too, a broad overall thought. I know there's been discussion for and against the state's design for the Crowell Road area, and a lot of questions. But on the other hand, we're talking about the town having ARPA funds. I know the new governor is just going to, one of her priorities is releasing a bond bill that will be for municipal infrastructure and whatever else. So I think we might want to be a little creative in thinking if we want to do, if something needs to be done to Crowell Road, if we decide that that's what we want, and we're not completely satisfied with what the state is offering us because of the state money, and but hard to turn down because of the state money, we maybe should start thinking about our own resources, because this is the gateway to Chatham we're talking about. It's so important, I think. It's the gateway to Chatham, and I think it should be exactly the way we want it. So if that means we need to start thinking about bonding or looking into different, catching hold of these, especially the new grant that's going to be coming out from the governor, I hope we'll take a look at all of that. So we'll have some really authentic alternatives that we can point to and know that would be available.
All right, so I'm just going to go over a little bit more of the budget book, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
So, and again, this is, in your book right now, but for those of you who like to see things online, and I can update this as we go along, which is great. So when we get all done with this, we can print the budget book as it has been approved at town meeting without having to, collate, and it's going to be much easier. So here you can see the transmittal letter that is at the beginning of your book. And then we can put in, and this is not all printed in the budget book right now, but we can put in, sort of a history of the town. I just threw in a little blurb here to start. We have demographics, and this is automatically generated through the platform ClearGov. So it tells you your economic analysis, household analysis, how many are families, how many married couples, whether you're higher than the state average, single, seniors living alone. We're 32% higher than the state average for seniors living alone.
Wow.
This is amazing.
Our population, and again, these come from their census revenue. So again, our population at this time was 6,594. You can see we declined with the recession, and then with COVID, we went way up. So daytime population, population by age group. So again, no surprise here that 65 to 74, then drops down a little bit more after that. But our housing overview, median 2020 median home value, and that's median, so. And they will update this as it goes along. So really a lot of information in here. We also, as noted, we have org charts. This one is very difficult to see because it's so small, but this is the town-wide org chart. When we go into departments, I think we also have org charts under each individual department. So if I go into so I picked Department General Government, and then we have each of the individual managers. So I go into the town manager, and you can see budget statement, all the goals, prior year accomplishments, your expenditure summary. Don't get alarmed when you see these little reds that say we're over budget, because we fund those through year-end transfers, and/or they might be prior year encumbrances that aren't budgeted. So you expend those the next year, but they're reserved from the prior year.
Could I ask a question? Alex, are copies of this on the tables in the town office? People should know what's in this and the amount of work that's in it and the amount of information. Are these books available to peruse for people just to go in and look at them in the town office on those tables?
Yeah, we usually have an extra one at the town office building. Usually one goes to the library and one probably here at this building. But once they are finalized, then we'll have the final budget once it's approved at town meeting too.
But people can go to the Budget Central, right?
They can go to Budget Central, and this is available. You can see all of this right online if you have a computer. So, and then this is an interesting. People always ask, how much is personnel expenses part of the budget? So 65% for personnel services, which is really the majority of many of our budgets. And here's the organizational chart for this department, or this division of this department. I'll go to accounting, same thing.
So easy to look at.
You can see the budget statement, staffing numbers are included. And then you can even go down and drill even further, and you get the spreadsheet breakdown, which will tell you how much it increases. Oh, and I wanted to show you one other thing. So again, in here, and this is in your book too, if you look at it, you can see sometimes they have notes. I didn't put it in there. Where did I put it?
Alex, this took a huge amount of work to put together.
Yeah, we're wondering
Is this
where's
in all your
extra
spare
person?
time? I don't, blows my mind.
It's, the departments presented all their information, and then it's just getting everything in here. So IT and I worked very hard on getting this up and running. And it's not quite done, but it will be.
Not for nothing, she got the Excellence Award.
Yeah.
That was on the financial statements. Let's see. I'm picking on Jill again here. I'm going to go to her.
While you're going through that, Alex, did you go over the average household income for Chatham? Was that in there?
It was in the demographics. I can go back to it in a second. Yeah. So here's the spreadsheet breakdown, and you can see this notes section over here. So you see this 26.8% increase. And I've noted that, we're moving the town manager assistant from HR budget, so it's now 100% in this budget where it was only 50% last year. And I have notes in here for different, and we can type them in. And the departments next year will type in everything online, so that will save a lot of time for us. And I can hit a red button and say, no. I can sit.
You can see you're
Question
very
mark and
excited
say,
over this.
I am. I can hit a button and say, I need more information. So it's, it really is pretty neat.
An interesting aside, a house was built next to me with the strangest house you've ever seen, on top of a hill that is almost inaccessible unless you have a four-wheel drive. So I said to the builder, and he told me what they were asking for, which they got, which, by the way, it's a fool born every day. So I said to him, how can you possibly ask that amount of money for that crappy house? And he said, no. It's less than a mile to the beach, and it's in the town of Chatham, we can get whatever we ask for. And they
And
got it.
let us attribute this to Norma Avalar and not to the Finance Committee. This is a personal statement of,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said
of
that.
judgment on her part.
Never staffed you before, no.
No, I never did either.
Alex, are those demographics in our budget book somewhere?
I don't think we printed those in
No,
the
I
budget
think they're
book.
only on the online, I
Yeah.
believe, yeah, I didn't think.
Yeah, I think at the time, we were trying to get one of the visuals, the icons changed. It was not very nice to the older population. So we had them change it, and they did. So
You mean all of us, most of us?
it showed, it was not good. It was not good. Suffice it to say, it was not good. So we didn't want to print it until they changed it. So here's the capital plan. And again, a lot of charts, which is really kind of cool. And you can come down and see then, so natural resources, and this includes whether, probably the best one is highway. So in highway, they include the truck, annual road maintenance, bike trail, sidewalk construction. So it's all lumped together under one. Harbor master, you've got the three-phase electrical service, boat replacement, Mitchell River Bridge, navigational aids, police, again, operations vehicle, recording system, true cruiser replacements. So they break it down by the department.
Very cool.
We ought to be applauded for a huge amount of work. It makes it so much easier for people like us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be easier, much easier next year. It's easier this year already. So that's the budget book.
Any further questions of Alex or Jill, our town manager? Then I will accept a motion to adjourn unless there are any other discussion.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and so
Don't forget this.
John Pepilardo is not here. Andy Young,
Aye.
Tommy Doan,
Yes.
Stephen Daniel is not here. Christian Andres, not here. Tracy Shields,
Yes.
Barbara Madison,
Yes.
Norma Avalar, and the chair votes yes for adjournment.
Thank you, Joanne.